I think they're taking it more seriously. I think people are realizing it's not going away. I think people are realizing that, hey, this is going to impact the way we work. Most importantly, though, it's important for people to realize that this isn't going to take away your work, right? It's going to essentially make them realize that it's going to change the way they're working.
Welcome to the Modern Membership Org podcast, where we sit down weekly with tech experts, nonprofit leaders, and industry representatives to go through the wins and losses on the modernization journey. My name's Riley. I'm your host with Bursting Silver, and each week we release new episodes where we talk about these new trends that are coming up and opportunities to improve your systems and better serve your members. Thanks for joining the conversation, and we're looking forward to modernizing together. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Modern Membership Org podcast. My name's Riley here with Bursting Silver, and today we're going to be talking about innovation and how that can make a holistic change on your organization through the power of AI. I'm really excited to introduce a return speaker here. He's from the very beginning. We've been getting out and talking about how to improve your organization and just the mindset from an executive level and for association leaders. Welcome back to the podcast, Al Povoledo.
Thanks, Riley. Great to be back, and love your shirt.
Thanks, you too. It looks good. Where'd you get that?
Yeah, I don't know. We must shop at the same store.
Yeah, must be just this whole thing. You just picked it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you got to rep the colors, right?
Exactly.
For those that haven't heard the previous episodes, I think it was 2 and 4, maybe give a brief introduction and let them know who you are and where you're from.
Yeah, for sure. So Al Povoledo, CEO of Bursting Silver and one of the original founders. So today, my understanding is we're talking about AI adoption, and we spent a couple of episodes several weeks back talking about it. We don't need to rehash some of the lessons learned there, but at a high level, it was start now, start small, do some meaningful stuff, be agile, fail quickly, move on, that kind of stuff. So I think the timing is good now to have this conversation again because BSI as an organization is also going through this. So I thought it would be a great opportunity for us to share what our learnings, our failures, what we're trying out with the community so that they can learn from us.
Yeah. And I think a big thing I wanted to get from this conversation today, at least for our listeners here, is just based on our experience, maybe they can glean some ideas or where to get started or inspire some conversations with their own team. So coming from the root of this episode, we have a new AI adoption program, and maybe you can walk us through what that big change looks like for Bursting Silver.
Sure. It's a new program that we put in place. Just to back it up a second, you need a little bit of background in terms of what we've been doing at BSI. So about a year ago, we decided that we needed to jump on this train called AI that was coming at us pretty quickly. And what we did was we put an informal program together where we introduced AI to the organization. And we did things like we put working groups together. We did idea sharing, lunch and learns, hackathons. We gave everybody access to ChatGPT. We did training sessions, that sort of thing. It was all pretty formal. Informal, I should say. But at the end of the year, we decided that, hey, this stuff is moving so quickly, we need to formalize a program. And this all basically culminates to where we are right now, where we put a formal program together that we've actually called Project Navigate. And that's what I think what we're going to talk about today and tell you really what that's about.
Yeah, just looking back at where we've come from as well, it's moved so fast. And I think adopting it as part of our everyday processes was an example of figuring out where it could work in our everyday, what it works like with the teams. I remember those hackathons and lunch and learns and share-a-thons. And it's exciting to see that now formalized and put into principle, like the things that we talk to our clients about now that we're doing that internally as well and taking those learnings. So for Project Navigate, maybe we'll start off taking a look at what's the name for and how did it come to be?
Sure. Actually, we had a company retreat in St. John's, Newfoundland a few weeks ago. And of course, there's a bit of a nautical theme there. It's on the water, et cetera. And we brought everybody in the company together. We went through some AI training together for a week. And then what we realized was, okay, great week. We learned a lot, but this has to continue. So we went with the nautical theme and we said, all right, let's call this thing Project Navigate. And let's put a program together that's going to continue this AI initiative over the next few months. at BSI. So that's where the name Project Navigate came from. And like I said, it's somewhat of a more formal structure, and it's based on some program pillars. And we can talk about exactly what those are. But the themes are around training, providing tools, providing policies to basically operate our business and to serve our clients. So that's what the program is in a nutshell.
Right. And there's many ways to go with that. It sounds like a big undertaking. So for the specifics of the actual program, who's driving it, or we can touch on what those pillars look like for the actual foundation of it.
Yeah. So in terms of who's working on it, we did put together a working group. We realized that we couldn't do this off the corner of our desks, and that we needed to put a group of people together that could drive this thing. And we thought about, well, let's get some volunteers together and we can do that. And we actually decided not to do that. What we decided to do is bring some hired guns within the company together to create this working group that brought different specialties to the table. And then we supplemented that team with subject matter experts, or SMEs. And as you know, you're one of them, right? So we bring in the right people at the right time, but there's a core group of about 4 people, and we meet regularly, minimum 3 times a week and more often, to drive this program. And we'll get into what the program's all about shortly. So that's how it's structured. I think one of the big kind of things I went into this with is listening to other podcasts and reading a lot and seeing what other companies are doing. Is I realized that a big endorsement from senior management was required. You couldn't just delegate this and say, all right, go do this AI thing. You have to be involved. So I'm very much involved in the process. I go to all the meetings. We talk about very granular stuff, very specific things, very tactical things, very strategic things at the same time. And what our group did is we basically put together a series of objectives that we wanted to accomplish over the next 12 months.
Yeah, and I like sitting in the C2. I'm not on all the meetings, but I think I jump in where relevant, and it's nice to add that little bit to the conversation. But for the project goal, why the 12 months?
Well, you can't go much longer than that. I mean, this stuff is changing on a dime. Like what's happening this week is going to be very different about what's happening next week. And you hear about roadmaps being 3-4 year roadmaps or 5-year strategic plans. That just doesn't apply in this world. I think in this AI world, 12 months is almost too long. We'll talk about what we're doing in the various stages of it, but 12 months just seemed like the right number for now. And it actually might be shorter. We'll see. But it certainly couldn't be longer than 12 months.
So, well, we've hinted to it. Let's get into that. What did the working group come up with in terms of that plan?
Yeah, well, the first thing we did, we defined our objectives in terms of what we wanted to achieve for the business. And I don't need to get into the specifics of that, but essentially we wanted to provide faster and better client service. That's kind of the overarching theme. And to get there, we needed, enabled by AI, obviously. And so we defined 4 stages. Each stage was between 2 and 3 months. And each of those stages achieved certain objectives. So, like I talked about earlier, there's these pillars of success, these essential themes that we wanted to hit for each one of those stages.
Right. And so for the goal, being empowered by AI and working faster, I like that. Is that split across each of those pillars, or how do those pillars play into that goal?
Yeah. Well, the 4 pillars support the objectives of the program. And I'll tell you what the 4 pillars are. The first thing is we wanted to introduce a competency framework. So what's that? It's just a fancy word for saying defining exactly where people need to be as far as their AI understanding is at their certain point in their career, their position, their level in the organization. So it's almost like a rubric or matrix of, if you are, this many years of experience, a consultant, non-technical, for example, this is what you should know about AI right now. So kind of like a stake in the ground. And so people can gauge themselves in terms of where they're at. How do people gauge themselves where they're at? That's the second thing, providing an assessment. So we gave people a tool that would allow them to self-assess and see where they are within that framework. And once they understand where they're at, we had to give them training programs. And that's the third pillar. So we'll talk about some of the training programs we put in place. Now, once people have that training, they have to be guided by policy and guardrails, because you can do a lot with AI and it can be pretty dangerous if you're not careful. So policies and procedures around that. So that's one of the pillars. And lastly, the last pillar is resources and tools. And that's the big one, is giving people the tools that they need to do their job. And when I say tools, these are things like agents and skills and connectors and plugins and access to those things like that. And quite frankly, time so that they can try things out. So those essentially are the pillars. And you just kind of review competency assessment, training, test, policy, tools. Those are the key ones.
Yeah, so it's an enablement program, essentially. Build up the team and get them knowing the tools. I think the empowerment
Yeah.
part too is the thing I'm excited about it, because we just live in such a saturated environment of this open world of what AI can do, and you can see different training programs daily on YouTube or Instagram scrolling. It's hard to suss out where you need to start, and having a self-assessment is I think a really cool way of being able to find those gaps and then point you in a direction or a training platform that
Yeah.
kind of walks you through where you're at.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a starting point for sure. And I do want to emphasize this. Our training program is essentially just to kind of get people started. It's the basics. It's, let's say, the first 30-40% of it, right? There aren't any training programs out there because the stuff's moving so quickly. They're going to teach you A to Z. But we want to get people going so that they can then go off and experiment and try things on their own. And what I'm trying to say here is this is not a prescribed program that you take these courses and by the end of it, you're going to be an AI expert. There's no such thing right now as far as that's concerned. So it's really an enablement program.
Yeah. I mean, there's self-proclaimed experts online, but I would agree that I don't think the point of this program is to be able to code your next AI platform, but understanding it is huge. I think that goes into knowing the tools and connectors and how to use them effectively. I preach having an AI governance policy a lot. I've spoken at IUG about it, and I've written articles, and just how important that is to give the team the barriers or the guideposts, the guardrails, so to speak, on the bowling alley, because then they know where to operate in and where is probably the safety zone for how to use
100%.
these tools.
Yeah, super important. I mean, AI bots, agents can ingest so much information and so much data, and you just have to be careful of what you give it. And specifically in our world, it's client data that's confidential to them. So they trust us with their data. So we need to be really careful in terms of what we ingest into our AI systems so that we can enable our skills and help our clients in return. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, walk that walk.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Super
I
important.
know too when it comes to the resourcing, for example, that we can run off and create tons of skills, and you get a minefield of plenty of ways to skin a cat, so to speak, and connectors as well. People can request new tools to attach to their quad and just have that running in the background for their specific task. How is the working group managing just kind of that big spread of requests and skills?
Yeah, actually, that's the hardest part of what this program is about, right? Putting training together, putting some policies together, easy peasy. Like you can leverage AI to find those kinds of tools and stuff like that. But the real magic is enabling people with those tools. So, what are those tools? Like you referenced, there's Claude skills, plugins, connectors to other applications, that sort of thing. So what we notice is we got a lot of feedback from everybody saying, hey, can we get that skill? Can we bring in this? Or I built this skill. Can we connect to this system? That sort of thing. If you're not careful, you're going to have this huge infrastructure to manage, and people are going to be pulling in stuff and using data that you shouldn't be, perhaps, or they're going to be using skills and plugins that may not necessarily be the right ones, that sort of thing. So there's an element of standardization that you have to have, and that has to be balanced with letting people try things out on their own. So it's kind of like a 50-50 game. But in terms of, standardization, what our working group is doing is it's specifically defining skills and standardizing, saying these are our BSI standards. So for example, like the one you did, the branding one, right? Standard BSI templates and that sort of thing. Everybody uses that. That's a pretty straight up one. But we also have people going off building, I built a business analysis skill, or I built a skill doing this and that. So part of the group's responsibility is to look at all those and try and find the best ones, try and bring in the pieces from the other ones that can make that one skill in this case better, and then standardize that and roll it out. right? But at the same time, right, I'm saying standardize a lot. Again, that's only 50% of the game. There's got to be a lot of trials and people doing things on their own, because we just can't push out one set of tools and say, this is it, right? So we have to enable people, just like we were talking about earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, it's also nice to see too, even just from last year's dipping a toe in to the ChatGPT, building our own GPTs or project folders and sharing amongst the teams. There was a way to work with the team to get creative, to find new ways to skin a cat. But
Yep.
I think that this is now kind of the collective effort coming back in and sorting through the gems. So that's really
Yep.
cool.
Absolutely, for sure. Yeah, a bunch of cowboys going off doing their own thing and cowgirls. And now we've got kind of a rodeo going on. We're on the same place, right? Maybe that's the analogy. I just made that up on the fly, so I don't know
Yeehaw.
if that's any good. Yeah, go ahead.
TM, heard it
Right.
here first. The BSI rodeo.
Yeah, right.
So now we're still early days with the program, and you've got the team putting together resources and courses and basically setting up the the farm for people to come in and start to look at it. So how is the rollout looking
Yeah.
for the project?
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of it. The way we've rolled it out, it's been fairly successful to date. So the first thing is we branded it. We called it Project Navigate. Kind of tied it back to our company retreat. So to kind of keep the momentum going from that training we did, we do a ton of communication, a lot of messaging out through our company communication channel through Slack. We do weekly updates and we tell people, hey, here's what we've released this week. Here's what's coming, that sort of thing. We put a website together specifically for this initiative, and people can go to that website, understand what the stages are, understand where we are in the program, understand the objectives. Even more importantly, go there and pull down skills, connectors, those tools that we've been talking about. They're all on the website. So they're pointed in the right direction. So there's one home for where people can find those things. The courses, the training, the policies, the procedures, that's all on the website. So communication and access to that information is hugely important. And like I talked about earlier, the working group that we put together meets a lot. We meet multiple times a week. We've got a big accountability structure in place to hold ourselves accountable, and that's super important. And our to dos and our deadlines are hours, days. We're not saying in a couple of weeks. Let's make sure we're just moving fast, and I really love that the way we're operating.
Yeah, I mean, communication guy here. I'm a big fan of communicating clearly, but I think
Yeah.
that when it comes to launching something like this, and there's so many ways to look at it, so many different opinions on AI, especially, I
Hmm.
think the getting the messaging right first is extremely important in terms of the success of the project. So I'm really excited to see how the team takes to the rollout and be adopting it and seeing what the feedback is from the things that were built as well. I
Yeah.
mean, personally invested because I was also part of it, but
Sure.
exciting to see that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and so far so good, but at some point in the next few weeks, we'll put out some sort of survey or some sort of informal kind of, hey, how are we doing here? That sort of thing. And we'll see. But my gut feel is that people are seeing and going, okay, this is great. Like I've got the infrastructure here, the tools, the program that I could expand my skills as far as AI is concerned and help our clients. So yeah, it's feeling good so far.
hmm Now, I wanted to touch on the privacy and confidentiality piece because as an IT company and consultants, we have the trust of our clients and we play by those rules when we walk that privacy walk. But for a leader listening here too and trying to instill a lot of those best practices themselves with their organization, with their teams, how important it is for a program like this to keep that data privacy and confidentiality at the forefront.
Yeah, it's job one. It's huge. We just can't. So, little background, right? We work with dozens, hundreds of clients, and we have access to their systems and their files, and there's a trust there. There's confidentiality agreements in place. And specifically, we have access to their member data, for example, if we're working with an association or a union and that sort of thing. So, we simply just can't open up our AI systems and ingest that information about our clients, specifically that member information. We can't. It's not ours, and it's private, and it belongs to our clients. So we had to put and are continually putting in measures in place so that to be exceptionally careful about what we bring into our AI systems. And, bottom line is we do not bring in our clients' member data. We just can't. And we've had to actually put in some very special processes and develop some technology to actually prevent that from happening so that we can have that those safety rails, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we're looking at this, then we're enabling the team to use AI effectively and move faster. That we talked about the member data as an input,
Mhm.
protecting and anonymizing anything that we put into it. Now, from an output perspective, are there any fears from this program that the team may be now outsourcing their judgment to these systems in place, to getting lazy, so to speak, or just relying too heavily on the AI to tell it what's right and run with it?
Yeah. Like I said, we informally did this program for a year before where we're at now, right? And so we saw a lot of that. People were jumping on AI and they were getting it to write reports and getting it to write emails and that sort of thing, which was pretty cool. But we're now at a point where we're kind of going, wait, I know AI wrote that. I know you didn't really think too hard about that. And then in truth, I've caught a few people just saying, hey, come on, you didn't write that report. You didn't put any thought into this. So that was kind of our evolution over the past year. I think we're a little ahead of the curve. But if you think about where people are right now, okay, July 2026, the rest of the world, I think there's a lot of the world that's still just using AI and being kind of lazy about what they're putting out there. I don't think we're there anymore. I think people at BSI are just a wee bit smarter about that now, and they're using AI to do a lot of the legwork, do a lot of the heavy lifting, but then putting their thought into it and putting their words into it and shaping it to be theirs. So we're using it as a head start. We're not using it as a replacement. And if it happens to be a case where that may not be the case, and someone's just putting out like a 6-page management report that's brilliantly written within half an hour, we're calling them out on it, saying, "Well, come on, you can't do it, right? Don't do that." So, yeah, that's kind of where we're at in the evolution. But I think the rest of the world's kind of figuring that out right now, and I think it will people will catch up on that.
Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast so far, and I just wanted to slide in and give you some resources while it's top of mind. Most organizations aren't behind on AI because they lack ambition. They're behind because they don't have a clear, practical framework on where to get started safely. Because of that, we've built an AI readiness checklist, which is a 13-point checklist to help guide you in terms of where you need to get started and who you need to talk to. It's free on our website as an article, or you can download it as a PDF. But if you're looking on getting started, that's the best first place. And then we've got our AI Smart Start program too, if you really want some guidance from our part. But please, the resources are there. They're in the show notes. And now let's get back to the podcast. Yeah, well, we're even looking at that internally from that competency assessment. People are at many levels and many different fluency,
Yeah.
knowing what to look for and a specific output. But part of the enablement program that we have with Project Navigate is also learning the tools and learning what to look for. How heavy of an emphasis is the team's learning through the phases, reflecting back on the success of the program?
Yeah. Well, like I said, we've put in a training program and we've given people courses so that they can take these courses. And what's important about the courses is we're not making any of the courses mandatory. Where there's suggested courseware learning paths, we're not benchmarking specific individuals to say you need to go from here to here. We're measuring it at a company level instead. And the reason we're doing that is because everybody learns at their own pace. Everybody learns differently, especially in the AI world. So like I said earlier, like you don't just take a course and become an expert. Different people can learn by taking some courses, trying things out on their own, that sort of thing. So we're giving them a framework, we're enabling them, and it's optional training based on what fits them. But again, as a company, we are measuring if we're going from here to here over the course of weeks and months. So we are doing that just to ensure that the program's working.
Yeah, and that's, I think, part of that feedback that we're thinking in 6 months to see how the program's doing, if there's a course correction, and how's the AI landscape changing.
Yeah, for sure. It changes so quickly. So, and which is
Yeah.
why we meet so often and why we're constantly pivoting and changing stuff. Hours, days.
So now taking an honest look at the rollout of the program,
Yeah.
you said there's 4 phases, and we're currently in that first stage, the puffin taking off on the nautical hypothetical analogy here. So
Yeah.
what's already been harder than expected with the program? And are there anything that just flat out hasn't worked yet?
Yeah, I think the toughest part's been holding back on what we can release. There's so much, so many skills, connectors, policies, procedures, training programs, assessments, frameworks, yada, 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 right? There's so much of that. But at the same time, there's only so much people can ingest because they actually have day jobs and have to serve clients and do that sort of thing. So we're being very strategic on what we're releasing out, and we're doing releases every week so that people can, spend a little bit of time, learn those things, and then we'll hit them next week with some new things. So that's been the surprising and toughest challenge is just picking and what to release and when. Like at the same time doing it quickly, right? Because we can't have, release something 1 month and then 3 months later. That's just not fast enough.
Right, keeping a good
Yeah.
pace.
Yeah, for sure.
So, what would be the most surprising part then in all that?
Well, that's a good one. It's amazing to see how quickly we can put stuff out there that matters just using AI. Like, for example, the website I talked about, we put that website together inside of a week. If you look at some in the old days, right, it would take, a couple months to cobble a website together and get some content up and that sort of thing. So we're leveraging AI to help us launch and run this program. So things like policies and procedures, we're using AI to do, we're training, we're using AI to do the website, that sort of thing. So it's amazing what you can actually generate using the power of AI. So that's been the fun part. And that just allows us to get stuff out so much more quickly and so much more efficiently.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking on behalf of the website build, that has been probably the most streamlined approach from my work input.
Yeah, you did
Uh,
a great job. Like what we started having that conversation on a Thursday, and literally on the Tuesday after, we had a website stood up with probably 80% of the content. And then on the Wednesday, we banged out the rest of the content and got it stood up and released it on the Thursday. It was literally a week, which is, crazy. Right.
Boom, boom, boom. That's the
Yeah.
benefit of a working group too. Many minds.
Yeah.
Shoulders of giants over here. But so the program's rolling out very early, but we go back to this idea of the retreat where we were sitting in those workshops talking about AI, we're sharing ideas. We split into two groups as well. For those that are listening, we had our developer, very technical team sitting in a room talking about ways they could improve their spaces. And we had our BAs and team leads in a room talking about use cases and such.
Yeah.
What has changed among the team following that retreat that you're already seeing now?
Yeah, I think they're taking it more seriously. I think people are realizing it's not going away. I think people are realizing that, hey, this is going to impact the way we work. I think most importantly, though, it's important for people to realize that this isn't going to take away your work, right? It's gonna essentially make them realize that it's gonna change the way they're working, right? And, like, you're exhibit A on this, right? You've embraced all of this stuff. Yeah, exactly. You've embraced all of this stuff, and right? It's changed the way you work, right? The way you worked 6 months ago, figuring things out, Googling stuff, reading articles, that sort of thing, and now you've created your own marketing brain, and you're talking to it constantly, and it's pulling in all sorts of resources and that sort of thing. It's monumentally changed the way you work. And I think our people are starting to realize that's what the impact is going to be on the way they work and their jobs. But, jobs are not going away, which is a
Yeah,
good part.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel like, at least from the marketing, talking to my machine best friend, it's really helped me spitball ideas, have a creative outlet, even have a mentor to walk through ideas myself as I'm
Yeah.
fleshing them out. So it's been really cool to be able to have the opportunity to run with that. So
Yeah. And for what
excited to
it's
see where
worth,
it
you're just
goes with the
operating
team
at a
too.
higher level than you ever could, right? That you ever have been, I should say. So, kudos to you for that.
I like to think so, but so I'm looking at the time here. Quick way to burn half an hour.
Yep.
And I want to be mindful of our listeners here too for some key takeaways. Distilling all of this that we looked at today and putting it in the mindset of a leader that's trying to implement a similar program or get that mindset shift in their team for how they could improve their own processes. What would be a quick kickoff question that a leader could ask themselves or their team to get started on their own version of this?
Yeah. I think they have to be honest with their staff and their organization. So the honest question is, are we ready? Are we ready to take this on? And that's a very honest question that you need honest answers back with. And like we talked about in previous podcasts, we've given people a bit of a framework on how to do that, right? Try things out, fail quickly, small bite-sized chunk, et cetera, et cetera. You can listen to those previous podcasts, but leaders have to be very honest with their people and say, are you willing to learn? Are you willing to try things out? Are you willing to do your job in a different way, at a different level, at a higher level? And if you get some honest answers where they're saying, well, no, well, there's some serious considerations there. So I think that's the first step.
Absolutely. So you mentioned it earlier about revisiting this with the team in 6 months, getting that feedback and just seeing where we're at. So I think we've already come up with another topic here in 6 months to kind of maybe
happy
talk
to
about
report
how
back.
we've gone.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll have to share some of those insights.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's hold ourselves accountable to the community, right? We'll let people know how we've done, for sure.
Yeah, and some good takeaways. Well, Al, appreciate you coming on the call here, and really excited to see where we go with this Project Navigate.
Excellent. Good to be here, and look forward to being back, Riley. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks. All right, that is a wrap to the Modern Membership Org podcast. Once again, my name's Riley. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks to Al for jumping on here too to just give some high-level notes on our Project Navigate. Still very early days, but we'll be back with an update. And for you, if there was anything that piqued your interest or you want more, we've got some resources in the show notes, including a checklist on areas that you can start to adopt AI in your own workspace. So feel free to grab that. That's for free. We have a free blog. You don't even have to give your information away. Read it at your own will. And if you like this podcast, please consider subscribing, giving us a rating. We're on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, and YouTube. Out every week. We'll see you next Tuesday. Take care.